My name is Megan Holloway, and last spring I stood at my parents' doorstep, my 6-year-old daughter clutching my hand, when I looked my father in the eye and said the words I never imagined I'd say. "We're tired of you. Get out and don't come back." Then I shut the door in his face. After everything they did to Ellie, they had the nerve to ask me for help. Have you ever had to choose between your own parents and your child? I did, and I chose right. Before we go any further, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? If you've ever had to protect your child from people you trusted, this story is for you. Now let me take you back to the day it all started unraveling. It was a Saturday in late April. That fake spring where the Minnesota air still bites, but the snows mostly melted just enough to reveal brittle grass and long-buried regrets. I remember gripping my steering wheel as I pulled into my parents' driveway. I could already feel it, that tightness in my chest I get whenever I'm here, like I'm bracing for an earthquake that never announces itself. Their house, that off-white split level in suburban Lake Elmo, had been my childhood home. But today, it didn't feel like home at all. I'd just gotten off a double shift at the clinic, my scrubs still smelled faintly of antiseptic, and I was looking forward to picking up Ellie, my daughter, and going home to crash. Instead, I got something else. Something that changed everything. I barely had time to knock when my mother opened the front door. She didn't say hello, didn't smile. She looked at me with this crisp finality, like she had rehearsed this moment. "We're tired of her," she said. Her voice didn't tremble. "Take her, Megan, and don't bring her back." I blinked. What? Behind her, Ellie appeared, my Ellie, wearing the pink polka dot backpack she loved and a too-big hoodie with a bunny on the front. Her lip was trembling. "Grandma yelled at me," she whispered. "Again." I stepped forward instinctively, but my mother didn't move. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice steady. "What happened?" She folded her arms. "She's disruptive, doesn't listen, always needing something, and frankly, Megan, we're too old to deal with this." "Too old?" I echoed. "She's 6. That's when my father emerged from the hallway, arms crossed over his chest like he'd been waiting for his cue. "She's just too much," he said. Like she was an item at a garage sale. Like she was an inconvenience. That's when my heart began pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Ellie looked up at me, those big brown eyes already red-rimmed. Her cheeks were streaked with dry tears. I bent down and zipped her coat for her with shaking hands. "Come on, baby, let's go home." "Can we stop for ice cream?" she asked in a tiny voice. "Sure," I lied. My throat was closing. As I walked her to the car, I didn't look back at my parents. I couldn't. If I did, I knew I'd scream, or cry, or maybe both. Once she was buckled in the back seat, I closed the door gently and just stood there beside the car. My hand trembled as I gripped the handle. I felt it then, like I was standing outside of myself, watching a life I no longer recognized. My parents. The people I'd brought groceries to every week. The people I had trusted to love my child. They had rejected Ellie like she was nothing. And me, I was too stunned to say a word. We drove home in silence, the only sound being the hum of the road and Ellie's quiet sniffling. She clutched her backpack like a stuffed animal. The betrayal didn't hit me all at once. It came in waves. Little aftershocks, a glance in the rearview mirror, the empty look in my daughter's eyes, the cruel words echoing in my ears. "She's just too much. No, she's mine." And starting that moment, I knew I'd never let them near her again. We got home just before dusk, the kind of dusky blue quiet that makes you whisper even when no one else is around. Our apartment was still warm from the late afternoon sun, but the air felt hollow. I flicked on the kitchen light, the soft yellow one over the sink, and hung my keys on the hook by habit. Ellie didn't run to her toys or ask for a snack like she usually did. She walked straight to the couch, curled up on the cushion, and hugged her knees to her chest. I knelt beside her. "Do you want grilled cheese for dinner?" I asked, keeping my voice light. "With the crusts cut off the way you like." She didn't answer right away. She just looked at me like she was trying to decide something important. Then she said, "Grandma said I ruin things." I froze. "What?" I sat down next to her, pulling her close. "She said I ruin quiet time. She said I always want too much attention. And Grandpa told me to go outside in the cold till I learned to be more like Macy." Macy. That's Claire's oldest, 8 years old and practically worshipped by my parents. She could knock over a lamp and they'd say it was playful. Ellie sneezes too loud and it's a disruption. "Ellie, honey," I said slowly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "You don't ruin anything." "But they don't let me do stuff," she whispered. "Macy and Ben got to help bake cookies." I asked and Grandma said no, that I'd mess up the dough. And when I wanted to play hide and seek, Grandpa said that was a baby game, so I just sat. Did you tell anyone how that made you feel? She shook her head. They like Claire's kids more, she said. Matter of fact, like she wasn't even hurt anymore, just used to it. That was the worst part. Ellie hadn't come home from a bad visit, she had come home from a slow unraveling of love. I reached for a blanket and wrapped it around both of us. You know what I think? I said after a moment. I think you are kind and curious and wonderful and maybe too much for people who are afraid of real feelings. She looked up at me. Is that a bad thing? No, sweetheart, I kissed her forehead. It's the best thing and I will never let anyone make you feel like you're too much again. We sat like that for a while. Her tiny heartbeat thudding against my chest, my own heart trying to catch up. I didn't cry. I wanted to, but it felt like if I started, I might not stop. Later that night, after I got her into pajamas and brushed the tangles from her hair, I tucked her into bed and kissed her goodnight. She looked up at me. Are we going back there next weekend? No, I said firmly, we're not. Her whole body softened like she'd been waiting for that answer. Okay. It was the quietest okay I'd ever heard. I turned off the light and stood in her doorway longer than usual, and for the first time I felt it, not anger, not even heartbreak. I felt doubt. Not in Ellie, not in my parenting, in them, in my own parents. That night when the dishes were done and Ellie was fast asleep, I sat alone in the kitchen with my notebook, the one I keep for half-thoughts and late-night rambles. I opened it and wrote, maybe I've been a bad mom by trusting the wrong people. And then I underlined it. I closed the notebook and stared at the fridge covered in drawings and crooked alphabet magnets. No, I wasn't a bad mom. But I had trusted people who didn't deserve her. And starting tomorrow, that was going to change. That night after Ellie fell asleep, I couldn't. I lay on the couch staring at the ceiling while the soft tick of the kitchen clock seemed louder than usual. It wasn't just the words they said to her that played over and over in my mind, it was the ease with which they said them. Like my child, my baby, was just another chore they were tired of. I got up, padded barefoot to the small table by the window, and opened my photo albums on my laptop. Holidays. Birthdays, weekends. There they all were, years of moments where I'd packed Ellie into the car, brought food, brought gifts, brought myself and all the effort it took just to be there. There was a photo from 2 Christmases ago. Ellie holding a homemade card she made for Grandpa. I remember how she ran up to give it to him, face lit up like a sunrise. He didn't even open it. Just mumbled, thanks, and set it aside while Macy tore open her third gift, laughter and squeals filling the room. Another photo, Ellie at Thanksgiving, sitting on the edge of the porch steps while her cousins played tag in the yard. She had her arms around her knees, chin resting on top. No one had invited her to join, and I hadn't seen it then. I was inside, bringing out another pie, chatting with Mom about how grateful I was that they were willing to help out so much. Help. What a joke. I clicked through image after image, memories flipping by like a slideshow of denial. All the while I kept thinking, was it always this clear? And I just didn't want to see it. Ellie wasn't the first to be left out. I was. As a kid, I cleaned up after every dinner without being asked. I got straight A's and never caused trouble. Claire, on the other hand, always had a new crisis. A bad grade, a broken heart, a drama-filled meltdown. And somehow she always got the hugs. The comfort, the praise. You're the strong one, Mom used to say to me, like it was a compliment. But really, it was a sentence. It meant, we won't protect you, we expect you to carry it, and I did. Even after college, when I got that nursing job and moved back home for a few months to save up, Claire was living across town, barely scraping by. And yet every time I brought home groceries, Dad would say, make sure you drop some off for your sister too, she's got the kids. I had a kid too. I just didn't expect everyone else to raise her for me. Looking back, it was always me bending. Stepping in, me doing the right thing. And somehow I never got to be the one who needed, until now. And when I finally did, when my daughter needed care, warmth, patience, what did they give her? Rejection, cold, brutal rejection. I glanced at the notebook I'd written in earlier. I picked it up again and stared at the sentence. Maybe I've been a bad mom by trusting the wrong people. I underlined it again. Then I wrote something underneath. This apartment is our real home now, not their house. That realization hit like a quiet thunderclap. I looked around, our modest 2-bedroom with its hand-me-down couch, thrift store table, and that little rainbow decal Ellie had stuck to the fridge. It had always felt like a pause between obligations. Now it felt like the only place where we were safe. It was a fortress. That's how I started seeing it. Our little apartment became sacred. The next morning, I took down every framed photo that had been taken at my parents' house. Every smile that now looked false. Every holiday where I thought we were part of something together. I tucked them into a drawer and replaced them with Ellie's artwork. Finger paint trees, glitter-covered hearts, that crayon sketch she made of me as a superhero with a pink cape. For the first time in years, my home looked like our life, not an extension of theirs. Later, I pulled out a dusty box from the top of the closet. My old journals. Letters. A few birthday cards from my mom, all of them saying some variation of "hope it's nice." "Sorry we're busy, love you." No calls, no gifts, just signatures. I hadn't cried the day before, not even in the car. But now I did. I sat on the floor with that box of memories and cried, not just for Ellie, but for the version of me that had waited so long to be seen. The daughter who tried so hard to earn love by being good, helpful, easy. I cried for the woman who thought that bringing her parents dinner once a week meant they'd love her child in return. And then I made a promise, to myself and to Ellie. Never again. Monday morning came with cold rain and a wind that howled like it had something to say. I wrapped Ellie in her favorite yellow raincoat, the one with the duck buttons, and held her hand as we walked up the narrow path to a brick building that smelled faintly of lemon polish and old library books. The plaque beside the door read, Dr. Lisa Niles, family therapist. I'd found her the morning after the visit to my parents, Googled her in a sleepless fog of fury and clarity. It felt strange, calling for help, saying out loud, "Something's broken and I don't know how to fix it." But the receptionist's voice had been warm. She squeezed us in. Dr. Niles' office was upstairs, tucked behind a frosted glass door. Inside, sunlight poured through tall windows, casting soft golden light onto shelves filled with picture books, puzzles, and art supplies. Ellie hovered by the coloring table. She looked so small in the big armchair with her rain boots still on. I gave her a tight smile as Dr. Niles turned to me. "Why don't we start together?" she said. "And then I can chat with Ellie while you take a breather." I nodded, sinking into the chair across from her. I didn't expect to fall apart. I thought I'd explain the situation in a controlled way, matter-of-fact, clinical. But the moment I opened my mouth, everything cracked open. I told her about my parents, about Claire's kids being golden while Ellie was always too loud, too clingy, too much. I told her about the moment on the porch, my mother's voice cold as a church pew, Ellie crying with her backpack slung over her shoulder like a dismissal. I told her how I froze. And then I told her the truth I'd only started whispering to myself. I think I've been trained to accept less. I thought love meant helping, sacrificing, earning, but now I realize I never even questioned if it was mutual. Dr. Niles didn't interrupt. She didn't say you're not crazy or they didn't mean it. She just nodded gently. "You know what I hear," she said softly. "I hear a mother who's already breaking the cycle. The moment you decided to protect her, even while your own heart was breaking, that was the beginning of something new." And that's when I cried, for real this time. Not angry tears, not even sad ones. Relieved. We took a short break, then Ellie had her turn. I sat in the hallway, fingers tapping my knees, listening to the muffled sound of crayons scribbling behind the door. When Dr. Niles called me back in, she smiled. "Ellie told me she likes robots and rainbows and hiding under the table when people are too loud. She also said she's glad we're not going back to Grandma's house." I laughed, surprised. "She said that?" "She said it with confidence, like she trusts you'll keep your word." "And I will, God, I will." We walked out into the rain and Ellie held my hand all the way to the car. "Can we come back?" she asked, climbing into her booster seat. "Yes," I said, buckling her in. "We're going to come every week for a while." She smiled like that answer made her feel safer. As I drove us home, windshield wipers swiping away the storm, I realized something was shifting inside me. The fog was clearing. I didn't feel strong, not yet, but I felt awake. That night while Ellie slept, I sat at the kitchen table and opened a fresh page in my journal. This time the words came fast. "They won't break her the way they tried to break me. I'm not just Ellie's mother, I'm her shield. We build new things from the ashes of old ones." James was pouring coffee into 2 mugs when I finally told him. It was Tuesday evening. The rain had stopped, but the air still held that weighty dampness like something unspoken still lingered. I sat at the kitchen table with my hands wrapped tightly around the mug he placed in front of me. Decaf with a splash of oat milk, just the way I like it. He leaned against the counter, watching me with those steady eyes that always made me feel a little more grounded. "What happened?" he asked softly. He already knew something was off. He always knows. I took a breath, then another. Then I told him everything, word for word. How my parents told me not to bring Ellie back. How Dad called her too much. How Ellie had said Grandma never let her help bake. How Grandpa made her sit outside in the cold while the cousins played inside. How they never even looked at her like she mattered. James didn't interrupt, but I watched the muscles in his jaw tighten the longer I spoke. His fingers flexed around his coffee cup, knuckles white by the time I finished. He didn't say, "I'm sure they didn't mean it." He didn't say, "Maybe you misunderstood." He didn't even say, "Let's just move on." He said, "That's it, no more money to them." I blinked. "What?" "I mean it," he said, setting his mug down. "They've been getting $600 a month from us for 4 years now. That's almost 30 grand, Megan. We justified it because they were helping with Ellie. Well, they're not helping anymore, they're hurting." But I started, unsure what I was defending. Habit, guilt. James didn't raise his voice, but his words hit like anchors. "They made our daughter cry, they made you doubt yourself, and they didn't even flinch when they said it to your face. You owe them nothing." I swallowed hard. "Be furious," I said. "Let them be," he said. "They've been spoiled by your kindness for decades." He walked over to the kitchen desk, logged into our shared account, and pulled up the automatic payment page. He found the monthly transfer labeled E&R Household and hovered over the cancel button. "You sure?" he asked. I thought of Ellie hugging her knees on our couch, of her whispering, "They like Claire's kids more." I thought of the decades I spent trying to prove I was good enough, quiet enough, useful enough. And now, watching James take a quiet but resolute stand beside me, I felt the warmth of something fierce rising in my chest. Not rage, not grief, dignity. "Yes," I said, "cancel it." He clicked. Just like that, the tether snapped. No more funding people who made us feel small. James sat back down and reached for my hand across the table. "We're building our own family, Meg. One where our daughter never has to beg to be treated with kindness." A single tear slipped down my cheek. "I should have told you sooner," I whispered. "You were trying to protect us," he said. "But now it's my turn to protect you." There was silence between us then, but it wasn't heavy, it was full, like something old had been laid down and something new had room to grow. That night, after we tucked Ellie in, James and I lay in bed without the TV on for once. We talked about everything we'd tolerated for too long, the guilt trips, the lopsided holidays, the expectations that I'd always be the one giving, never asking. "You've always been the glue," James said softly. "Even when they didn't deserve to be held together." I turned toward him. "Do you think I've been blind?" "No," he said. "I think you were raised to believe love means bending. You just didn't know there was a different kind." I reached for his hand under the covers. "I want Ellie to grow up knowing she never has to earn love." "She will," he promised, "because she has you." Dr. Niles' office was quieter the second time. Maybe it was the morning light, softer through the windows, or maybe it was me quieter inside but heavier somehow. Ellie sat cross-legged on the rug, building a tower of wooden blocks. Her new favorite thing was knocking them over in slow motion, pretending they were castles collapsing under spells. Dr. Niles chuckled and called her the tiny architect of chaos, and Ellie beamed. I smiled too, but my smile felt like something I was borrowing. After Ellie went into the adjacent room with the therapy assistant, armed with crayons and stickers, I sat on the couch and folded my hands in my lap. "I'm ready to talk about before," I said. Dr. Niles didn't push. She just waited, patient and unblinking, the way good therapists do. Like she knew the words would come once I was done holding them back. "I used to think all this was new," I began. "That what happened with my parents and Ellie was some kind of shocking shift." I looked at her. "But it wasn't new, it was just louder." She nodded. "I used to be Ellie," I said. "Not as outspoken, not as soft maybe, but I remember things, little things that didn't seem like abuse, but now, I can't unsee it." I took a breath. "Claire got away with everything," I said, my voice quieter. "If she skipped school, it was stress. If I came home with a B, it was not living up to potential. Claire got out of chores because she had sensitive skin. I cleaned the baseboards at age 10 with a toothbrush." Dr. Niles scribbled something gently on her notepad. "My mom once told me I was born old. Like I came into the world already knowing how to make myself useful." "And how did that feel?" she asked. I gave a small laugh. Like a compliment. At the time, I thought it made me special, chosen. But now I wonder if it was just a way to excuse never nurturing me. The truth sat between us, still and sharp. I was the safe one, I said. The helper, the you're so strong one. And when Claire became a mother, it was like the crown passed to her kids. I thought I was being a good daughter by bringing Ellie over every weekend, helping with the yard, dropping off meals. But they never saw her as their grandchild. She was just another thing I dragged in behind me. A long pause. I felt tears behind my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Ellie said they never let her play, that they scolded her for breathing too loud, that they only smiled when Claire's kids did something, even if it was the same exact thing. I shook my head. I started bringing groceries to my parents when I was 21 and barely affording rent. And even then, when Claire needed anything, I made sure she had it. I babysat while she went to job interviews. I filled her fridge after she had her second baby. But when I had Ellie, they sent a gift card to Target and didn't visit for 2 weeks. Dr. Niles was quiet, but her eyes were kind. That was the hardest part, being seen kindly. I didn't even know what boundaries were back then, I admitted. I thought they were selfish. And what do you think now? She asked gently. I stared out the window. I think boundaries are the only thing keeping me from being erased. She nodded. You're not wrong. I used to think if I did enough, gave enough, I'd earn my place in the family. But now I realize it was never conditional because of what I did. It was always conditional because of who I was not. A silence followed, this time deeper. I realized my hands were trembling in my lap. Megan, Dr. Niles said softly, you are grieving. Not just your parents' rejection, but the illusion that they ever gave you the love you needed. The words settled around me like dust. Not cruel, not shocking, just true. And you're not doing that alone, she added. You're doing it while raising a child and breaking a cycle that's lived in your family for years. That's when the tears came, not in gasps, not loud, just quiet streams running down my face as I nodded. For the first time, I wasn't apologizing for them. I wasn't defending them. I was choosing me, choosing Ellie, choosing a different ending. It started with a text. Claire, hey, can I call you sometime today? Just want to check in. Just seeing her name on my screen made my stomach twist. My thumb hovered over the reply button for a full minute before I answered, me, sure. Ellie's home now, but I can talk after 8. I braced myself all day. Not because I expected a fight, I didn't, but because I had no idea who Claire was going to be on the other end of that line. The golden daughter, the passive observer, the one who never noticed the walls were built to keep me out. At 8:03 the phone rang. Hey, I said. Hey, she echoed, voice a little hesitant. Is now still okay? Yeah, Ellie just fell asleep. Okay, good. There was a pause, long enough to make it awkward, then Claire exhaled. So Mom told me what happened, about Ellie, about what she said to you. I stayed quiet. I don't even have words, Meg. Did she really say not to bring Ellie back? She did, I said evenly. And Dad stood right there and said she was too much, like she was noise, not a person. Claire swore under her breath. I can't believe they said that out loud. I raised an eyebrow even though she couldn't see it. But they did, I said, and it wasn't out of nowhere. What do you mean? You know what I mean, Claire, you've seen it, you just didn't want to call it what it was. She was silent again. I didn't think it was that bad, she finally whispered. I mean, I knew they gave my kids more attention, I saw it, but I figured maybe Ellie was just having off days, or maybe Mom and Dad were getting older and tired, I don't know. Ellie's 6, I said. 6, she shouldn't be made to feel like a burden because she's not Macy or Ben. I know, Claire said. I know. Her voice cracked a little. I've been thinking about it all week, she admitted. The more I replay stuff in my head, the more it makes sense. Like how when we were kids you were always helping, and I was the one who got the compliments, even when you cleaned up my messes. That made something catch in my throat. Mom used to say I was spirited, she said, voice thick with irony. And if I broke a rule, she'd say, oh, Claire's just figuring herself out. But if you got upset about anything, it was don't make a scene, Megan. I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something warmer than resentment. I guess I just never looked at it from your side, she continued. Because I didn't have to. That's privilege, I said quietly. It doesn't always look like money or power, sometimes it just looks like being the one they smiled at first. She sniffled on the other end. I feel horrible, she whispered. I don't even know what to say. I didn't say, it's okay, because it wasn't. But I also didn't want to hang up. Not yet. What made you text me? I asked. She hesitated, then said, Ben asked me why Ellie doesn't come over anymore and I didn't have an answer I was proud of. That hit deep. Did you talk to Mom and Dad about it? I asked. I tried, she said, but Mom brushed it off, said you were being dramatic. Dad said Megan's always been emotional. I laughed once, sharp. Emotional. They're not going to take responsibility, are they? No, I said. They never do. But I'm not staying silent this time. Claire was quiet for a moment. I'm on your side, she said finally. I just never saw it clearly until now. Her voice wobbled at the end and I believed her. I really did. Thank you, I said. That means something. Another pause. I want our kids to grow up close, Claire added softly. And I don't want mine to think it's okay to treat people differently because they're quieter or sad sometimes or just not what Grandma expects. I felt tears rise suddenly, unexpected, sharp. Me neither. We talked for another half hour. About old memories that now made more sense. About how many times I'd quietly stepped aside. How many times Claire had been shielded and I had been silenced. And somewhere in the middle of that conversation, I realized something important. Just because Claire had been the favored one didn't mean she hadn't been shaped by it too. She hadn't asked for it. She'd just been told it was love, just like I had. By the end of the call, we weren't sisters pretending to be close anymore. We were women, unraveling the same old story from opposite ends, and finally meeting in the middle. It started with a text. Simple, short, chilling. Mom, maybe we overreacted. You know how kids can be. I stared at the screen in silence, thumb hovering over it. The words blurred, not because of tears, but because of rage, hot, quiet rage that lived somewhere in my throat now. I didn't respond. An hour later, my voicemail pinged. It was my father's voice this time, measured, irritated in that calm, clipped way that always meant he felt entitled to the moral high ground. Megan, it's your father. I think this has gone far enough. Your tone lately, it's not helpful. We're still your parents. We all say things we don't mean sometimes, and I think it's time you stopped making this bigger than it is. We love you, but you need to calm down. I set the phone down on the kitchen counter like it had burned me. Ellie was in the other room, watching a cartoon with one sock half off and a juice box in hand, blissfully unaware of the way grown-ups twist the knife with a smile. I sat down at the table, folded my hands, and stared out the window. They were trying to do what they'd always done. Minimize, manipulate, move on. It was a cycle I knew by heart: harm, denial, guilt trip, reset without apology, and I used to fall for it. Every single time. When I was 13 and they forgot to pick me up from theater rehearsal in the middle of a snowstorm, they blamed the calendar app. When I was 20 and Claire ruined my college laptop with a spilled drink, Mom said, "Don't be so attached to material things." And when Ellie was born and no one visited for a week, it was, we didn't want to intrude. It was never about them doing better. It was always about me getting over it faster. But this time, I felt something shift in my spine. A quiet click, like a door I'd kept cracked, finally swung shut. This time I wasn't just someone's daughter, I was someone's mother. And Ellie deserved a mom who knew how to stand up to people, even if they were family. Especially if they were family. That night, I didn't respond to the text or the voicemail, but I did open my journal again. I wrote, "Love without accountability is not love, it's control. They are not entitled to access just because they share my blood. I don't owe them silence to keep the peace that never protected me." I closed the journal and sat there for a long time, just breathing. The next morning, Claire called, not texted, called. "Hey," she said gently. "I got a message from Mom too. She said you were being reactive." I laughed. "Of course she did. And then she said," Claire continued, "that you're punishing them and that they're afraid you'll poison Ellie against the family." That word, poison, hit me in the chest. I stood and walked into the living room where Ellie was drawing a picture of a castle. "Claire," I said, my voice steady, "you don't poison a child when you protect her." There was a long pause. "You're right," she said finally. "And honestly, if anything, they're the ones who poisoned me. All those years of being told I was better, it made me crueler than I realized." I appreciated her honesty. I really did. But I was also done centering their reactions. "It's not your job to fix them," I said. "It's not yours to forgive them," she replied. We were learning, slowly, together. After we hung up, I finally sent one reply to my parents. It was short, direct, free of explanation. "Your actions toward my daughter were harmful. I will not pretend otherwise. Please do not contact me unless it's to take real responsibility. We are focusing on healing now." No greetings, no pleasantries, no breadcrumb of hope that I was ready to smooth it all over. I hit send. My hands were steady. Later that day, Ellie brought me her drawing, two girls inside a tall pink castle. Is that us? I asked. She nodded. And see, she pointed. No mean people can come in, it has a magic door. I swallowed a lump in my throat. Good, I said. I like this castle. I hung it on the fridge beside the crayon sun from last week. We didn't talk about Grandma and Grandpa that day. But Ellie didn't ask about them either. She didn't ask when we'd visit. She didn't ask what she did wrong. And that silence, that absence of confusion, meant I was doing something right. We were moving forward, no longer waiting for an apology that might never come, no longer standing at the door hoping they'd knock with the right words. We'd built something better, a boundary, a home, a magic door. It was a quiet Friday evening when Claire showed up. No warning, no dramatic build-up, just a knock on the door at 6:42 p.m. while I was in the middle of slicing strawberries for Ellie's snack. I peeked through the peephole. My heart did a weird lurch. It was her, Claire, holding a tray of something covered in foil. Her kids, Macy and Ben, stood behind her fidgeting, bundled in their puffy jackets, the kind that made them look like awkward little astronauts. I opened the door slowly. Hey, she said, her voice gentler than I'd ever heard it. I brought lasagna. Lasagna. The Holloway version of a peace offering. Passed down like a family tradition from our mother, only this time it didn't come with conditions. Come in, I said, stepping back. Ben ran to greet Ellie, and the two disappeared into the bedroom like old friends, giggling over some inside joke I'd never understand. Macy followed more cautiously, but Ellie pulled her in quickly. Claire walked into the kitchen and set the tray down. It's meatless, she added. Didn't remember if you still do the vegetarian thing. I don't, I said with a faint smile. But thank you, she nodded. It felt like something I didn't want to come empty-handed. We stood there for a moment, neither of us sure how to start. Then she glanced at the drawing still on the fridge, the castle Ellie had drawn, the one with the pink towers and the magic door that kept the mean people out. Claire looked at it for a long moment, then back at me. She really said that to Ellie, she asked quietly. That she ruins quiet time. She did. Claire closed her eyes briefly and pressed her fingers to her forehead. God. She didn't just say it, I added, she believed it. I poured us each a glass of wine, the cheap grocery store red that tastes better when your nerves are shot, and we sat on the couch, legs tucked beneath us like we used to do when we were kids, sneaking snacks after bedtime. I've been thinking, she said after a sip. A lot. About when we were younger. About how I never had to try for attention, I just got it. I nodded. I know, you were always doing everything, cleaning up, saying the right things, and I was always falling apart, but they acted like that made me special. It did, I said, not bitter, just honest. It made you visible. Claire set down her glass and looked at me, eyes glassy. I think I liked it too much, being the favorite. I don't even think I realized how much it cost you. You didn't have to realize, I said. It wasn't your job to notice. But it is now, she said. Because I have kids, and I can't let them grow up thinking that love is something you only get when you shine brightest. I felt that sentence in my bones. I'm on your side now, Meg. I don't know why it took me so long, but I'm here. I want you to know that. There was a long silence after that, a good one, a quiet that didn't feel like dismissal, more like a pause in music before the next note. Thank you, I said. Really? She gave a small smile. I didn't bring them over to make peace between the families. I brought them over because I want them to see what kindness looks like, what it means to own your mistakes. Macy wandered back into the room holding one of Ellie's picture books. She climbed into Claire's lap and whispered something in her ear. Claire smiled and kissed her temple. Then she looked at me again. Ellie's lucky. She's got a mom who won't let her be invisible. I didn't say anything back. I just took a sip of wine, let it settle on my tongue, and let myself feel the thing I hadn't let in for weeks. Warmth. Not from obligation, not from habit, but from something that felt real. Sisterly. Maybe for the first time. Later, after the kids had eaten lasagna and run wild through the apartment playing some nonsense game involving stuffed animals and an upside-down laundry basket, Claire helped me load the dishwasher. She looked around the kitchen and smiled faintly. It feels peaceful here, she said. It didn't used to, I admitted. Well, she said, bumping her shoulder gently against mine, maybe now it will. We didn't hug goodbye, we didn't need to, but just before she left, she paused in the doorway and looked back. You're doing the hard thing, she said. And you're doing it well. It was a Sunday. A bright, too perfect kind of afternoon. Ellie was in her room folding paper cranes from the colorful pack of origami paper Claire had brought over last week. The apartment smelled like cinnamon and clean laundry. Then came the knock. Not rushed, not angry, polite, calculated. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened the door halfway. There they were, my parents. Mom wore her church sweater, the one she always saved for holidays. Dad had combed his hair, smoothed it back like he used to on school picture days. He was holding a paper bag with something inside, cookies, I think. Store-bought, probably. A bribe wrapped in sugar. "Hi, sweetheart," Mom said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We were just in the area," Dad added. "Thought we'd stop by, maybe catch up. The last time they saw me, they told me not to bring Ellie back. Now here they were, pretending nothing happened. No apology, no ownership, just a bag of cookies and two soft smiles like that could erase the fracture." I stepped outside and closed the door behind me, leaving it barely cracked. "You can't come in," I said, voice calm but firm. Mom blinked. "Why not?" "Because you hurt my daughter," I said. "And you haven't taken responsibility, not even once." Mom's smile faltered. "Oh, Megan, don't do this. We were upset. Things were said, but we're family." "No," I said. "Family doesn't treat a 6-year-old like she's disposable." Dad stepped forward, lowering his voice like he thought it made him reasonable. "You're overreacting again. It wasn't personal." "You told her she was too much," I said. "You told me to take her and not bring her back. And now you want to act like we can just rewind?" I shook my head. "You don't get to hurt her and then show up with cookies like it's Sunday brunch." Their expressions shifted. The rehearsed warmth slipped. And underneath was what had always been there, the disbelief that I would ever say no to them. "Megan," Dad said coldly, "you're making this very difficult." "No," I said quietly. "For the first time, I'm making it clear." They stood there for a moment, stunned. Then Mom muttered something about how ungrateful this is after everything we've done. I didn't respond. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just stepped back inside and shut the door, locked it. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a disobedient daughter. I felt like a mother, protecting her child. They came back in January, not dressed up this time. No cookies, no calm voices, no pretending, just desperation. I opened the door to find them standing there, shrunken by winter, by shame, by something heavier than either of them had probably ever carried. Dad's coat was frayed. Mom clutched a folder full of papers with a shaking hand. Behind them, the snow blew sideways like the sky itself wanted to shut the door for me. "We lost the house," Mom said before I could ask. "They repossessed it. The mortgage," she stopped. Her mouth trembled. "We didn't think it would get this bad. I didn't invite them in." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, heart thudding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. Dad stepped forward, voice raw now. "We've always helped you when we could. We're still your parents." That word again, parents. They said it like a key to a door they'd already slammed shut. Ellie peeked around the hallway corner behind me. She wore her fuzzy slippers, her hair in messy braids. Just a kid, watching the adults who once dismissed her now standing out in the cold. I didn't shoo her away. I wanted her to see this part too, because this wasn't about vengeance, it was about truth. "You said my daughter was too much," I said slowly. "You made her feel like she didn't belong in your home." Mom's eyes welled. "We were wrong, we were stressed, no," I cut in. "You were cruel, and now you're here because you need something." Dad's jaw clenched. "We just need help, a little, until we figure things out. We're not asking for a handout, just support." The irony hit so hard I almost laughed. Support. They wanted me to hold them up. The same people who couldn't tolerate a 6-year-old's laughter, who stood on their porch and told us not to come back. I took a deep breath and said it. "I'm tired of you." Their eyes widened. My words hung heavy in the frozen air. "I'm tired of pretending, tired of shrinking, tired of trying to win your approval while you give me scraps. You stood on your porch and told me my child wasn't welcome. You don't get to come here now, empty-handed, full of excuses, and expect open arms." Mom's lip quivered. "You need to go," I finished. "There's no place for you in this life anymore." Dad started to say something, but I shut the door, not with a slam, just quiet finality. Ellie came over and slipped her small hand into mine. "Were they sad?" she asked. "Maybe," I said, "but that doesn't mean we open the door." She nodded. And just like that, I knew she'd carry this lesson in her bones. You can love someone and still choose yourself. The apartment felt different now. Lighter. Not because it had changed, but because we had. No more checking the phone for guilt-laced messages. No more wondering if I should be the one to reach out first. No more explanations for why I chose my daughter over tradition. Instead, there were Saturday mornings filled with pancake batter on the counter and Ellie dancing barefoot in her pajamas to Taylor Swift, therapy appointments marked on the fridge in bright pink crayon, and a growing stack of hand-drawn family portraits taped to the wall, always me and Ellie, sometimes Claire and her kids, sometimes James, but never them. Not once. James started coming home earlier from work. He helped with bedtime stories more. He smiled differently now when he looked at me, not the strained "are you okay" kind, but the kind that said, "You're here, you're whole, you're strong." He told me over coffee one morning, "You don't flinch anymore when the phone rings. You used to brace for impact." I hadn't noticed, but he was right. Claire stopped by every other weekend, no longer out of obligation but with real warmth. Sometimes she brought pastries, sometimes just herself. Always with this quiet understanding between us now, like we were rebuilding a bridge, brick by careful brick. One afternoon, while the kids were in the living room building blanket forts, Claire sat at my table and said, "You know, I think Mom and Dad were scared of how different you were. You didn't need their validation the way I did." I looked at her. "I thought I did need it." "You didn't," she said. "You just didn't know it yet." Therapy helped. It helped me name things. Childhood patterns. The wounds I tried to wallpaper over with busyness and obedience. It helped Ellie too. Dr. Niles said children don't always have the words for trauma, but they remember how safe they felt, how believed, how protected. And that's what I gave her now. Not just a roof, but a fortress. Not just rules, but truth. We signed her up for a beginner's dance class on Tuesdays. She wore a purple leotard with a little heart stitched on the chest. The first time she twirled across the room, arms wide, her hair flying, I nearly cried. Because that joy, that freedom, that belonged to her. No one would shame it out of her, not on my watch. Sometimes I still thought about my parents. Wondered where they were, what they were telling themselves about how things ended, but it didn't haunt me anymore. It didn't ache. It just existed like an old scar you don't feel when it rains. Because this new life, this small, fierce, joyful life, it was ours. And we didn't owe it to anyone else. It was just another Tuesday afternoon. I was unloading groceries while Ellie sat at the kitchen table, legs swinging under the chair, carefully folding a sheet of yellow construction paper. Her backpack lay half unzipped on the floor beside her, crayons spilled in a lazy half-circle. "Mom," she said, not looking up, "you can't peek until I say." "Deal," I said, smiling as I tucked a carton of strawberries into the fridge. "Is this one of those top-secret 6-year-old missions?" She giggled. "Sort of, it's for school. Miss Jensen said we had to make a My Hero page for the hallway. Everyone's doing one." "Oh," I asked, still pretending to be casual. "Who'd you pick?" She didn't answer, just kept coloring, tongue pressed in concentration against her top lip. A few minutes later, she stood up, paper in hand. "Okay, now." I wiped my hands on a dish towel, turned and froze. It was a drawing of me. Stick figure me with a messy brown bun and a pink sweater. One hand held Ellie's and the other held a bright orange shield. Next to us was a big green dragon with angry red eyes and fire coming out of its mouth. Ellie had drawn little arrows pointing to it with the word pain in bubble letters. Above it all, in glitter glue that was still drying, were the words, "My hero, my mom. She fights dragons for me." I didn't mean to cry, but I did. Right there in the middle of our cluttered kitchen, between the cereal box and the bag of frozen peas. I knelt down and pulled her into a hug, burying my face in her shoulder. "You picked me," I whispered. She nodded. "Because you're strong, you don't let mean people in, and you always make me feel safe. Even when you're sad, you're still brave." I had no words for a moment, just breath, just warmth, just the overwhelming swell of everything we'd been through and everything we'd overcome. I looked at the dragon again. She didn't draw my parents. She didn't draw faces, just a dragon, because in her heart what we went through didn't need names to leave scars. It just needed truth, and in her truth I was the one who slayed it. We hung the page on the fridge, right below the castle she'd drawn months ago, the castle with the magic door, the one that kept the mean people out. Now her hero lived inside that castle, and I was finally learning how to believe it too. Has anyone ever surprised you by seeing your strength in a way you couldn't yet see in yourself? Tell me in the comments. Ellie saw Megan not as broken, but as brave. And sometimes, that's all it takes to turn healing into power. If this story touched you, share your thoughts. What did you feel? What would you have done? And don't forget to like, comment, and follow for more powerful stories from women reclaiming their voices. Thank you for being here. We made it to the end together.